Welcome to the Limitless Podcast. The Limitless Podcast is centered around exactly that, being limitless. Hunting, fishing, fitness, nutrition, adventure, disabilities. What may be covered during the Limitless Podcast will be, well, limitless. Stay tuned for this episode of the Limitless Podcast. Limitless Podcast listeners, we're here for a much anticipated episode, at least from my position, because all of you had no idea that it's coming. So the excitement and anticipation is here in my lap. But, where this podcast has gone and the premise behind it, the very first episode, I talk about the Limitless Podcast is limitless. And the intro talks about the podcast being limitless in content and people that we're going to have on the show, our guests. And we've had some pretty interesting ones in the last probably 2 months, 3 months. Today, once again, the podcast, the outdoor industry, and my faith has put me in contact with another individual that I would have never dreamed of connecting with and having on the show. And this is going to be a really interesting conversation today. But speaking of connections and people, let's talk about the show sponsors. I mean, that's a great lead in, right? So as always, we have Hunting Day Coffee, which I'm enjoying right now. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see my really nice custom Badlands Limitless Outdoors coffee mug, which inside of it is some piping hot Hunting Day PRC blend. But that's 10% off any Hunting Day coffee on their website. Code is BLimitless10. We have Phelps Game Calls, 20% off your first order. That's not one item. That is your first order. Or I should say an order. Maybe you're a Phelps fan already and you've made orders before. That's a 20% off one entire order. The code is BLimitless20, so use that wisely. On Point Adventure Foods, my favorite freeze-dried food company in the industry, based out of Pennsylvania. Husband and wife, home-cooked meals in their licensed and approved freeze-dried kitchen in their, wow, that's a mouthful, in their home. They truly are home-cooked meals, and they are also a faith-based company. That is 10% off any order, BLimitless10, again, at On Point Adventure Foods. And it is the best freeze-dried food meals I've ever had. Their strawberry shortcake truly is ridiculous. Vortex Optics, 25% off any Vortex products at eurooptics.com. Vortex does not deal directly with the consumer. So they have provided us with a code that you use at eurooptics.com, and that is VTXLMTLS25. Again, that's for 25% off any Vortex products at eurooptics.com. We have Wilderness Athlete, which I'm usually drinking on the show, but this morning all I have is my coffee. That's 20% off any Wilderness Athlete product at their website, and that is BLimitless20. And then we have the Love Sauce. That is a boutique hot sauce company out of Maryland, veteran owned, and it is 10% off any order of $12 or more. BLimitless10 for that. And then we have Venandy Holsters out of Utah, the Salt Lake City area, but they're not in Salt Lake. That's 10% off any holster at Venandy Holsters. That is a holster that I use behind my vinyl harness in between my chest. It's impeccable. They do make just a standard chest rig where it's just the holster. And then it's also the holster that I use for my inside the pants for personal carry, EDC carry, anything like that. So check out Venandy Holsters. That is veteran and Leo veteran. So military veteran and Leo veteran owned and operated Venandy Holsters. And then the last thing that we have is, and did I say that's BLimitless10? I think it did. And then the We have the magnetic gear strap from Stick It Gear. It's what I use on my rangefinder so that I don't have to worry about where I'm going to put my rangefinder when I'm trying to range an animal for a shot. It's a really, really cool item. They have offered up their product at discount, Be Limitless 10 at Stick It Gear for their magnetic rangefinder strap. So with all that said, again, I want to remind everybody that there are 0 kickbacks to the Limitless podcast right now for any of those sponsors. We are going into we're well into year 2 of the show. I do not receive any funding. This show is funded out of my own pocket for the pure enjoyment of interacting with folks in the outdoor industry, fellow Christians, talking about hunting and fishing and functional fitness and amputees, and the content today about conservation. And it's just, I do this because I love it, not to get paid. And so all those sponsors are there for your benefit. They're all companies that I use or consume and I trust. So they are there for your benefit. So please use and enjoy those codes. So with that said, I have a young man staring at me through that super long intro of sponsors. And I am super happy to introduce Tanner Tripp of Wild Giants. And Tanner has a pretty interesting story to tell. So Tanner, please take it away.
Yeah, Aaron, thank you. Definitely appreciate you having me on here. Been really looking forward to this. Excited to come on and just have a conversation about what we're doing and how things are going. And like you said, we got a pretty exciting story. So we started Wild Giants Conservation Fund last year, and people ask all the time, where did this idea come from? What's the vision behind it, the heart behind it? And there's a lot of different pieces that come into launching an organization like this. But what I like to tell people, a really, really practical story that most outdoors people can understand. So growing up, whenever we would go on a trip out west or even just driving around up to the cabin or something like that, you're always looking around for animals, always seeing what's going on, and always, we'd have contests growing up, who can see the most animals, whatever they are. And in my young career, I've had the opportunity to travel a lot of places around the world and taken that principle with and realized that a lot of the places around the world, they have really, really majestic animals that are native to these areas, but they've just been wiped out of a lot of these areas because of poaching or political instability, different things like that. And so we were driving through one of these countries once, and it's like one of the most breathtaking places I've ever been. Just absolutely gorgeous, felt so wild. And you look around and there's just nothing. It's just dead. And come to find out that pretty much every single wild animal has been killed from these areas, from these mountains and things like that. And so the idea for Wild Giants is to go into places that have these rich heritage of beautiful keystone animals and work alongside governments and local communities to help reintroduce and build towards sustainable populations of these animals. And one of the things that I share all the time, that kind of one of the driving forces behind what we're doing is, there's so much of what we do, you can fall into a ditch on one side or the other. And the two ditches that we try to meet in the middle is coming from a purely idealistic approach. And so there are a lot of really great organizations out there that kind of stay in the idealistic, and it's really great ideals of what they want to see for these animals and habitats and things like that. And then you have the other side where it's just a purely pragmatic, practical approach. And there's not as much care for the animals. There's not as much reverence for these wild places. And so what we want to do is start from an idealistic approach mindset. Say we want to see these animals thriving back in their native habitats. We want to see sustainability in some of these places. Conservation work is a long-term game, and if you're not careful, it can basically go on forever if you don't build towards that sustainability. And that's where the pragmatic approach comes. What's actually working around the world? What are the systems of wildlife conservation that are actually producing that sustainability, that long-term fruit? And how do we marry those together? And still, we don't abandon the idealistic, but we also don't abandon the pragmatism either. So.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So where did this start for you?
Well, I grew up in the outdoors. I love hunting, love fishing, camping, all of that. And as I've gotten a bit older, I always had this love for the animals. Hunting was a way to interact. It was a way to kind of come back to the roots of who we are as people. But that love for the animals themselves, that reverence, that honor for them, that was always preeminent in my approach to hunting and being in the outdoors and things. And so this idea for conservation, it's been in me for a long time. It just hadn't really fleshed itself out. And so the exciting thing is I still get excited to go hunting. I'm excited to go out into the outdoors and things like that. But what really fires me up is this idea of going into places where you have these animals, these majestic animals, and actually building towards long-term sustainability for future generations to be able to enjoy them and take them in. And if you go back even further, as Christians, we're called to steward the earth and take care of it. As humans, we're called to steward it and take care of it. And so you have a lot of places around the world where, for one reason or another, the local communities, they have more pressing needs than wildlife conservation. They're trying to feed their families. They're trying to take care of their families, things like that. And so coming from a Western mindset, you can kind of take it for granted. Like, why don't people care about the animals? Why are they poaching? Why don't they care about these things? And that's where the pragmatism comes in. You have to give them a reason to care about them. You have to bring them alongside. And so, in South Africa, it's the perfect picture for what we're trying to do. 50 years ago, most of the animals there were wiped out. Several of them were extinct in the wild, and the numbers were severely dwindling because they didn't have any value to the locals. It was all farming, and the wildlife was competing with the cattle. And so there was no reason to protect these animals. But when they discovered that through ecotourism and hunting and things like that, these animals could have a tremendous value, then they started to protect them, and they started to manage them, and they started to invest money into breeding and developing sustainable populations to where you have today that the numbers are through the roof. And so taking those principles of we need to incentivize, we need to build long-term models that are actually going to get the local people who ultimately are responsible. We can come in as outsiders, but ultimately the local people are responsible for the longevity of these animals. And so bringing them alongside, I get really excited about that. Yeah.
So did you go to school for this? What background do you bring to the table for this? Other than growing up in the outdoors and being a hunter yourself?
Yeah, I did not go to school for this. And that's one of the things that I've really, learned early on in this is no one person can do all of this. No one person can build something like this. No one person can actually bring about meaningful, long-lasting change like we're talking about. And so the Lord has really, really blessed me with a team of people around who have a lot of experience in different areas. People who are donating really their time and their expertise, and they've had careers building organizations and building brands and doing this kind of thing. And so just having that wealth of experience around me, having all of that that input from people who can really help grow what we're trying to do has been crucial. And one of the things that's really driven me is this idea that nothing good like this happens in a vacuum. As Christians, we're called to bring others alongside us in whatever we do. And so there's this quote, and I'm going to butcher it, but it goes something along the lines of a fool learns from, or a wise man learns from his own mistakes. I said that wrong. A wise man learns from the mistakes of others. A fool learns from his own mistakes. And so bringing along others who have made these mistakes and coming in as a learner, I'm young, so I don't pretend to know it all, but what I do bring is a lot of passion, a lot of vision, a lot of excitement. And the Lord is just surrounding me and this team with people who are helping make it happen.
Excellent. So how big is your team?
So we, team is loosely defined. We have a board of people who are really the people who are most involved right now. But we've been blessed with some really amazing wildlife consultants who are bringing a lot of that expertise on the actual wildlife side. We have a partner in country where we're launching who brings a wealth of business experience and connections in the government and things like that. The country where we're going itself, the Republic of Georgia, the government there is really excited about what we're doing. And so we have a lot of the people who are coming on to help. But again, depends how you define team. At this point, I'm the only one on staff with the organization, but there's a lot of people around who are helping to make it happen.
Okay. So you do have a board of directors, and then you have ancillary supporters and or team members that are working towards the success of this effort. You said that you have a point of contact in country. Now, is that person local? Are they another U.S. individual that's over there? What's their background, and how does that work?
Yeah, so let me give a little bit, before I dive into that, let me give a little bit of context for where we're going in the short term and this first big vision that the Lord's given, and then I'll kind of get into how some of those other doors have opened. So I've always been fascinated by like mountain animals, specifically ibex. Like, it's our logo for a reason. Like, I'm personally deeply passionate about these kinds of animals. And so when we're looking across the landscape, the Central Asia region just jumped off the page for a lot of reasons. So many just majestic, beautiful animals, and such an opportunity to come in with what we're trying to do. And so our first big focus is on the Caucasus region, which it's the countries like Republic of Georgia, Azerbaijan, Armenia, parts of Iran, parts of Russia. And you have a lot of really just beautiful animals there. And so we are starting in the Republic of Georgia for a lot of reasons. It fits what we're trying to do. It fits the vision of what we want to do with the animals. And it's also really friendly to the West. And so as an American, it's really a lot easier to get visas and launch an organization there from which we can branch out versus trying to launch into a different country in the region. And so, so in the Republic of Georgia, you have several really, the situation is quite dire after the fall of the Soviet Union. Basically, most of the animals got wiped out pretty hard. And so our first two projects are to help restore populations of Bezoar ibex and West Caucasian tur. The West Caucasian tur is a really exciting one. Most people haven't heard of it. And so one of our early jobs is to raise awareness of this animal and build excitement for this really beautiful animal. There are some in Russia, but in the Republic of Georgia, it's only found in these two places. And in the Republic of Georgia, they officially only counted 12 last year in the first ever count that was done on them. Wow. So the numbers, when we say the numbers are dire, the numbers are dire. And then the Bezoar ibex, it's just, man, it's one of the most beautiful animals in the world. And across the region, it's just been wiped out. And so we're starting in the Republic of Georgia. We're going to branch out across the region from there. And when we started to explore this, we got connected with several people in country who have been just instrumental in making this happen. So the partner that I referenced earlier is doing really amazing work through dairy farming. But he has a huge passion for the wildlife as well. He grew up hunting with his dad and things like that. And he shares this vision to do this wildlife conservation work. And so he's been just blessed magnificently with connections in the government and the community. He's very well thought of, and so as we've met with government officials to talk about importing animals and hunting permits and getting land and all the different things that go into actually doing this kind of project, he's been able to open a lot of those doors. And so when I say this kind of project, I can imagine that's the next question. Our model of approaching conservation, again, it's starting from a place of aiming towards sustainability. And so when I talked about earlier about the people who have experience who are pouring their expertise into this, the advice has been, you're going to end up where you aim is generally where you're going to hit. And so aiming at the right thing from the start. And so what we're aiming at is long-term sustainability for our organization, as well as for the projects we're doing. And so when you have an animal that only has 12 specimens left in the country, on a bad day, those animals could all be wiped out. There's a lot of predators, there's poaching, there's political instability in the region. And so what we're doing is building intensive breeding facilities to breed these animals in their native habitat and in the highest quality conditions, and build a larger herd in captivity, so that no matter what happens in the wild, this animal is not going to be wiped out of the region or from the world. We want to bring a little bit of stability to it. And then from there, once we've built that stability, partnering alongside the wildlife agencies, the Department of Agriculture, the Agency of Protected Areas in the country, to strategically start reintroducing these back into protected areas where they can actually have some measure of enforcement to keep them from getting poached again. And long-term, we believe that an animal's intrinsic value is what should fund. It's really the only way to fund its conservation. And so building in these communities, and investing in these communities to say, if we can stabilize these herd levels, there are foreigners who will come and pay a lot of money to be able to enjoy these animals and hunt them and different things like that, and bringing alongside the local community so that they're ultimately the champions of protecting these animals.
So I just looked up the tur on Google while you were talking. Very, very neat looking critter.
Yeah, they are, aren't they?
Yeah.
So there's three. Go ahead. There's three subspecies of tur. So you have the eastern tur, the mid-Caucasian tur, and the western tur. And so ultimately, we'll do work with especially the eastern and the western. The eastern, the numbers are a lot more stable right now. That's had a lot more investment into them. It's had there are a couple other organizations in the region who are doing work with the eastern tur. But when we went there a couple months ago and just started asking people about this western tur, we were just blown away. Like, nobody knew anything about it. The conservation organizations in the region, they had no idea. They had done no counts, no research, nothing whatsoever. And so the only people in the whole country we found that had done any type of monitoring of the tur was the wildlife agency. And the wildlife agency, we really, really awesome people who kind of share a lot of the same values that we share. They did the first ever count of these animals that we were able to find, and they counted 12 of them. And when we came back and shared that with some of these other organizations, they were just floored. They're like, we had no idea. And so there is some work that's already been done, and we want to build on the foundations of that, and also provide a unique perspective on this long-term vision. Gotcha.
So the goal, we're going to talk about the tur right now. The goal is to get the tur in Georgia to a healthy state of productivity, ultimately to boost the economy by hosting big game hunts. So you're going to turn this, like take the South African platform and put it into Georgia for the tur and the ibex. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah. And so where we diverge from, it's South Africa, you could say Texas as well. You have a lot of these high fence reserves where they're breeding and hunting, and these different places, the ranchers and stuff, they'll talk about the amazing conservation work they're doing. And on one hand, it's absolutely true. I mean, you can't deny that an animal that was on the brink of extinction and now is flourishing, they've done conservation for. But we want to take it a step further and say, I really believe that until these animals are back in the wild, in their historic habitats, you've not completed the job. And so it's taking this model that's really, really worked in South Africa. It's working in Texas of actually generating revenue and income and capitalizing on the values of these animals to actually breed more animals and grow the herd populations, and then taking those and putting them back in the wild.
Okay. What's your time frame look like that?
Yeah, so it's man, the doors are open. We're entering right now into a capital campaign to start raising, to continue raising the money to launch this first big project. But pretty much everything we need at this point, we have lined up. We've got the land lined up. We've got the building materials to build the facilities, the import permits, the hunting permits eventually. We have a veterinarian that we're partnering with in country to help provide some of the local expertise of diseases and things like that. And so all of that is ready to go. What we need right now is the funds to launch the first phase of this project. And so coming into a situation like this, there's a lot of unknowns. And again, from the experience of others, you can jump in and bring in a pile of animals and try and go big fast, and it can really blow up in your face. And so the first phase of what we're trying to do is we're calling a proof of concept, to really prove that we can not only get the animals in, but we can get the proper feed for them. We can get the proper medicine to keep them from dying from, local diseases, and actually prove that we can breed them successfully. And so very ambitiously, I'd rather aim for something ambitious and end up a little after than aim for something way down and not get there until then. And so ambitiously, I'm aiming to have animals on the ground by the end of this year in Georgia. So
okay,
we'll see how that goes.
What's their breeding cycle like?
So each animal is different. And so we're starting with the tur and the ibex. There is not a lot of research actually done on the tur because there's not been a lot of work done with this. And so that's one of the really cool things that we're going to be able to enter into and provide and learn from. One of the things that conservationists talk about is the difference in this kind of work. You're always balancing what's best for the herd, for the species, and what's best for the individual. So you look at zoos, and I don't know about you, I get so sad going to zoos, especially seeing the big cats, and then these tiny little cages just like languishing, just laying down, just look like all life has been beat out of them. And it's like, oh, that's so heartbreaking for the animal. But when you zoom out and say, well, yeah, that's not the best conditions for that animal, but they're getting valuable research on the species, and they're able to breed these animals and partner with other zoos to breed and grow the population. You kind of see how it's not so black and white. It's what's best for the animal and the species. You have to work together. And so these animals, they breed in I believe November, and usually give birth to one sole kid. They're a goat species, and I believe they give birth in March or April. So there's a lot to learn. There's a lot to be learned, though. A lot of that research is done on the eastern tur.
One kid.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's, I from what I understand, you can get twins at times. You can get twins. I've never heard of them getting triplets, but again, a lot of this is what's true for the eastern tur, assuming it's the same for the western tur. But until we get our hands dirty, get in there and actually learn some of these things and do the research on them, it's a little bit of guesswork.
So are you bringing in a population of western turs from other countries to kick this off?
Yeah, so we're starting with our first project is going to be with the Bezoar ibex. And the reason for that is you have a more viable worldwide population. And so as we try to learn all of the intricacies, doing this kind of work in the States would be difficult. Doing it in a foreign country with different systems and all the different things, bless you, that go with that. We don't want to rush in and make mistakes and lose animals that could have been avoided had we waited. So we're starting with the Bezoar ibex. We're going to learn a lot from that. That's phase one. Phase two, tentatively, will be between 1 and 2 years, which is this proof of concept. Phase two will be growth and expansion, so actually growing the herds, adding animals. So in phase two is when we're trying to bring in the western tur, and those are going to have to come from out of the country. So from zoos, there are some in the Tbilisi Zoo in Georgia, but not a lot. There are some in Russia, obviously. And then funnily enough, there are a decent number of them in Texas. So we come back to Texas and the work that Texas, these ranchers are doing in Texas. They actually have a population of eastern and western tur, different places. The challenge is there is no genetic sequence. There's no research been done to say what are the genetics of this animal. And so we have to go in and either from the National Zoo or more ideally from the wild to really ensure you're getting pure animals. Pull hairs from some of these animals, send them to a lab, figure out what is the exact gene code, and then compare those to whatever animals we're bringing in. Because we have to be, learn from the mistakes of the past with people bringing in animals, exotic animals and releasing them and inbreeding and hybridizing and all that stuff. We want to execute this to the absolute highest standards. And so that means making sure we're bringing in 100% genetically pure animals to breed and reintroduce back into the area.
That's impressive. That's very elaborate.
What was that?
That's very elaborate.
It is. In a lot of ways it is. And in a lot of ways, we're able to use the experience that others have gained, the wisdom that others have gained from doing this in different settings in the US and South Africa, places like that. And that's where good wildlife consultants, good experts on these things, on breeding of them, on building really, really high quality breeding facilities, because we refuse to say, well, we're doing this for the good of the species, so the individual animals, whatever, it doesn't matter if they're not in the best conditions. We want to do the best of both. And again, that comes back to my faith as well. Whether you eat or drink, do it all for the glory of God.
That's incredible. So are you going to live there?
That's the plan. Yeah, that's the plan.
Okay.
My wife is an incredible woman. She is every bit as adventurous as I am. We've got 2 little girls, and our plan is, once we have launched phase 1 and have animals on the ground, and we've secured the funding for phase 2, which is the growth and expansion phase, that's when we'll actually move overseas and manage it, on the ground day to day.
Okay.
And then again, long term, we want to build a model. So I have a map back here. We want to build a model that's going to be able to expand and be reproducible across the region. So one of the animals I've really got my eye on, it's just this majestic animal, is the Trans-Caspian urial. They have really solid populations in Texas. The only place really they're left in the wild now is in Iran. But their native range extends. It's a huge range. And so really, really excited to expand and add new animals like that.
So which animal is that?
Yeah, look this one up. You're going to be impressed by this one. It's called the Trans-Caspian urial. It is breathtaking.
Okay. You talk while I look up the Trans-Caspian.
And so, yeah, so that's the other piece, is what's actually going to be, what's going to set us apart from all the other organizations doing this work. I mentioned sustainability earlier.
Mm-hmm.
We want to incorporate business practices, ecotourism, ethical hunting, things like that, to actually fund this mission. And so bringing in some of these other animals that are highly sought after across the world. You have animals in Iran, which are just majestic, and people want to hunt these animals. They want to see these animals, take pictures of these animals, and nobody wants to go to Iran. So building building a facility where people can actually come and enjoy these animals in a safe environment is actually a big part of what we're building towards to fund this whole thing.
That's a really cool looking goat.
Isn't it? Isn't it beautiful?
I mean, it has, at least what I'm seeing, a full curl on this goat is you could almost say it's similar to a ram.
Yeah. I think they are actually a sheep. They're similar to the mouflon sheep.
Really,
they get
really
big.
Cool. Huh? Never even heard of that critter. Amazing.
And that's kind of our job. People haven't heard of these animals, so to your average person, it's like, well, I want to support the bighorns in the U.S. or I want to support elk populations, or like, I want to do that too. But for me, when you're talking about animals that are so in such dire situation and without outside help, it's not going to change. To me, it's just a no-brainer. Like, we need to raise awareness and get people excited about animals like this.
Yeah. No, that's really neat. I didn't even know that they had those in Texas.
Yeah, they sure do. You can go hunt one if you want.
Well, it wouldn't be quite the same, right? You're talking about hunting an animal that is, originally in the mountains, and now you're going to be on the plains of Texas in a high fence.
That's right.
Harvesting one, it would not be quite the same.
That's right. And to each their own. There are some people who that's all they want to do. They're happy to check that off the list, get the picture, put it on the wall. They're happy to go hunt them in Texas.
Absolutely.
But I'm built a little bit differently. I want to go and see these animals in their native habitat. I want to go up into the mountains. I don't want to shoot them over corn.
Yeah. No, I don't disagree. And I'm with you. If your idea of a great weekend, and I would do this for whitetail or an axis or, other critters. If you want to go have a 4-day weekend with your buddy or the family, or a group of guys, kind of have a gentleman's hunt, go book a lodge in Texas and go eat some good food and socialize.
Absolutely.
Play cribbage,
Absolutely.
and go sit in a blind and shoot an animal, and you get to take the meat home. That's a big thing about Texas is you bring your meat home. When you go to Africa, I'm assuming your hunt. I went on a red stag hunt in Spain. I never even had an opportunity to taste my red stag.
Yeah.
The meat went
such
to
a
the
shame.
locals. It is. The meat went to the locals, so that's great. And I'm good with that. It's not as if it went to waste. I would not have been okay with that. But that's the difficult thing for me in hunting overseas is the meat stays there. I don't bring it home from my freezer. And that's one of the reasons why I hunt. It's not to have a trophy hanging on my wall. Because I like to masticate that flesh for the next year and enjoy the memory of how I harvest it.
That's right. And and there are ways so we just got back from South Africa, my dad and I, and just an unbelievable experience. Such a great time. It was our first time over there. And what they did that I loved, because I'm the same way. It's like, man, the trophy's great. I want to eat it. I want to enjoy it. Is at the end of the trip, they took all of the tenderloins from the animals that we had shot from the whole week. And they did like a blind taste testing, and they cooked them all. And you got to try each one of them and guess which was which. And you at least got to eat some of it. But I'm right there with you, man. That's the big reason why. I mean, that's why people have been hunting for all of history. It's this trophy hunting idea it's a relatively new concept.
It's it is. And it is a, that's a whole nother rabbit hole. I mean, look at how the trophy hunting concept is bled into the whitetail industry.
Yeah.
And how it's
impacted
the entire whitetail hunting industry.
Yeah.
The anti-spike group that is very prominent on social media, the Let It Grow group, or it's just a 4-point or just a 6-point, or it's not my biggest, or it's not
Absolutely.
what I was after, or you should have let that grow. Like, it's like the trophy has overtaken the hunting industry, rather than looking at the foundation of it and looking at the experience of it. And that's you talk about slogans, sayings, mantras, ideals. Mine is it's just, memories are measured in moments, not inches. Right.
Absolutely.
And so you could go out and have the most wonderful weekend with a family member or a friend or group of people and, harvest a 4-point whitetail. And that 4 or 5 day, 3-day, whatever that experience is, could provide you with a lifetime of memories. Or you pay a whole lot of money to go to Texas and shoot a 210-inch class whitetail, where it's, you walk out into a high fenced area and the guide says, shoot that. Or people that literally look at a portfolio. I mean,
that's a great one. Pick your animal ahead of time.
There might be people that don't understand this is reality, that you can book a hunt with an outfitter within the United States that gives you a portfolio, or says, hey, here's a deer at another ranch, or here's a deer at a breeder on the East Coast, and you get to choose. You're like,
you pick your animal.
Out. So then you show up, and then they go take you out, and they're like, okay, there's your deer, shoot it. I mean, that happens, right?
It does.
That's real. That's the trophy industry. And there's people that really enjoy that. And if that's your thing, okay, it's not my thing. I want the experience. And if I come home empty-handed, Tanner, I come home empty-handed. I wrote a book where the majority of the chapters in that book rotate there's no information on filling a tag. I'm just sharing the experience or a very small snapshot of that hunt, because it's the experience that drives me.
And man, I love hearing you say that. I'm finding less and less people who are motivated by that, but that's 100% me as well. One of the blessings in disguise was my wife and I, we moved to Europe to work and live and travel and do some humanitarian type work. And one of the things that I had to accept early on is like all the animals, the trophies, the mounts, I do some of my own taxidermy, all of that just stayed in America. We couldn't bring it with us. What I could bring is the memories and the pictures. And so my favorite hunt I've ever been on was my first elk hunt. We did a backcountry hunt in Wyoming, and horseback in and all, hiking miles and miles and miles to not really see much. I mean, that's my favorite hunt I've ever been on, because the experience was just incredible, breathtaking, beautiful. And so for me, it's again, everybody has their own thing, to each their own. I've heard stories of people paying $50,000 for a trophy moose in Alaska, and they tell the outfitter, go shoot it for me. Here's my rifle, go shoot it. I'll come and take a picture with it. That's all I want. I'll take the trophy home. If that's you, more power to you. But I'm right there with you. The experience, the memory, doing it the right way. That's what it's all about.
And my shirt I'm wearing says "Drink coffee, shoot turkeys," and that's a hunting day coffee shirt. I love them. Turkey hunting is becoming more and more my favorite sport, because the time of year that spring turkey takes place in, their breeding season, it's just a wonderful time of year. A lot of states you can only hunt till noon, and then the birds have the rest of the day without pressure. And I hunt them, in my preference is the backcountry. I pursue them the same way that I do elk or deer, because I love backcountry deer hunting as well. It's the experience for me. And I have, most states you can have 2 to 3 tags. If you're hunting with somebody else, they have multiple tags.
Right.
So your success rate is through the roof. It's a ton of fun. It is the experience. And when I put on a pack and I go into the backcountry in pursuit of turkeys, I'm doing everything that I do for elk hunting. So I'm on a year that I backcountry hunt turkey and that I draw an elk tag and I backcountry hunt elk, I'm pursuing 2 different animals, in 2 different months. Or spring turkey could be April or May, depending upon the state. I mean, there's some states that start in March and some that go all the way into June, right? So realistically, I could pursue turkeys for a 4-month period, depending on how much I wanted to travel. But I put a pack on my back, I go and I pursue that animal in the spring and in the fall, and I'm doing everything the same. Other than turkeys, I have to be much more cognizant to their sight and hearing abilities. And elk, I have to worry about their nose more than I have to worry about their vision. But everything else, it's so cookie cutter for me. Yeah. The pack out's a lot easier with the turkey.
The pack out's a lot easier on the turkey.
the camaraderie in spring backcountry turkey is through the roof. Yeah, you have early mornings. You might be up at 3 o'clock in the morning to go get someplace on the mountain where they're roosted, or you're anticipating them to be roosted, or where their travels are. But come noon, your shotguns are unloaded.
Yeah, you're enjoying each other.
Yeah, you can go scout, you can go shed hunting, you can go mushroom hunting, you can take a nap, you can go roost birds.
That's the way to do it.
You truly get time to enjoy the morning's experience with with whoever you're hunting with. And then you have dinner, crawl in your shelter, get up the next morning. You plan your hunt for the next day. You get up and you go after them. You're calling, you're using topography, you're looking for sign, you're interacting and talking with them, you're moving into a strategic location. Backcountry turkey hunting is just amazing. And when we talk about that experience, Tanner, people ask me, how do you backcountry hunt on the East Coast? I'm like, backcountry hunting is not about a location. it's it's a mindset.
Mm.
So I can pick apart a spot in the Appalachians where the topography limits the amount of foot traffic and or hunting pressure, because the average dude does not want to put forth that much effort. Not only do
Hmm.
they want to spend the time looking for the right spot, they're not willing to do the hard things to put forth the effort to get into those locations to hunt all day and then get a critter out.
Yeah.
Even if it's a 20-pound turkey, they're like, why would I climb that mountain, or why would I go up and down all of that elevation to pack out a 20-pound turkey? I'm not going to do it. I can just drive down the road and sit on the field edge or in my backyard, or, my relative has a farm. This, name the situation. Guys want to, they want to fill their tag the easiest way possible. And again, that's okay. I crave the experience, so I can take
Guys like us say, why wouldn't you do it that way? Why would you
yeah,
do it any other way?
yeah. And I grew up in the Pacific Northwest. I love being in big country. I started backcountry hunting in big country,
Mm.
but now living in Maryland, almost on the Atlantic Ocean, it's so time consuming and costly for me to get out west to big country, and all of it then is non-resident, so it's very pricey.
Hmm.
When I can get into the Appalachians, and again, I can find those pockets in those areas where, whether it's packing in zero point 0.8 miles or packing in 3 or 4 miles and pitching my shelter off trail and enjoying an incredible hunt. Backcountry hunting is not about 10,000, 15,000, 20,000 acres. It's
Mm.
it's the mindset. It's where
Mm.
you're at, and what you're doing, and how you're doing it for me in the wilderness setting. And dude, it's so much fun. Now, again, I'm going to circle back to I have a couple of buddies that either live in Texas or love to hunt in Texas. And if you want to take a 4-day period and meet up with a couple of your buddies and go grab an Airbnb or a lodge setting and go enjoy a hunt together, you can create some incredible memories, and
Yeah.
almost guaranteed to bring meat home,
Yeah.
right? Almost
Yeah.
guaranteed. And there's nothing wrong with that either.
No. And the cool thing about that as well is, it's all, everything is, you can go almost anywhere and still have a good experience, have an authentic experience. So even down in Texas, there are places they're big ranches. And if you don't want to sit in a blind over corn, you can get out with your bow and walk around and listen and actually hunt. And you're going to have better odds of seeing something because it's managed and there's more animals, but you can still put yourself through that challenge. That's one of the things I've learned, because I've always been so like, man, I don't want anything to do with a high fence hunt, but a high fence hunt is really what you make of it.
And I also believe there's a big difference between a 150 acre high fence hunt or a 1,500 acre high fence hunt or a 10,000 acre high fence hunt, right?
Oh yeah,
There's differences there.
absolutely.
My nonprofit, the A3G Initiative, our annual hunts in Texas, it's a 2,300 acre low fence ranch. You're hunting. You might see the same deer every sit. You might not. If you go get in a blind and the winds are wrong, you'll be lucky if you see a young doe.
Mm.
You still have to do everything right.
Yeah,
Have the opportunity on a class of animal or any animal.
yeah,
And
yeah, and that's good.
if you're not executing the proper hunting application within the blind, you're not going to see deer. They're wild animals.
Yeah, yeah, and that just goes back to it. You can high fence hunt where they're not wild animals. They've been so accustomed to humans that it's not a hunt. But a lot of these places, they are doing it. You can really make it a real experience, a real hunt, a real
100%.
a real challenge. And again, it's to each their own. There's no point. What's valuable to me. So like, really good example. I grew up spin fishing my whole life up here in Minnesota. I mean, just incredible bass fishing. My dad's an amazing bass fisher, so we grew up doing that together. The day I think he rused the most is the day I picked up a fly rod. Because when I started fly fishing, I never wanted to go back. I can catch more fish traditional spin, it's traditional spin tackle, and I love pitching docks. I love doing all that, but the challenge and the feeling of you feel so connected to the animal, to the fish, for whatever reason, when you're fighting it by hand, when you're fighting it with the fly rod. And it is more of a challenge, but the reward is so much greater for me doing that. And so he hates it. He doesn't love that I like to do that, but man, I never want to go back, just because it's that experience is what it's all about. It's not about holding up a huge fish. It's not about holding up an animal with a big rack. It's about the experience.
I've caught one bass on a fly rod. I don't call myself a fly fisherman. But I like fly fishing. And there's a difference for me. That's a question I ask people a lot. Are you a hunter or do you like to hunt? I like to fly fish, but I am not a fly fisherman. I've caught a ton of trout by fly rod. I much prefer to fish dry flies, but I was fishing on a location where a tributary dumped into the Columbia River, and we were fishing the Oregon side of the Columbia at the mouth of a small tributary, and we were fishing for steelhead. We were targeting them there at the mouth of the run, and I hooked a fish, and it ended up being a 3-pound smallmouth on this fly rod. And I'll tell you what, that smallmouth fought so hard that when I first hooked that fish, my father was with me, and the gentleman that we were fishing with, they all thought I'd hooked a steelhead. I mean, that 3-pound smallmouth was on fire, and it's one of the more memorable fish that I've ever caught on a fly rod, and we were targeting steelhead.
Right, and a lot of people would have been disappointed to see that smallmouth come out of the water.
Yeah.
And again, yeah.
Yeah.
It is what you want from it. Yeah. Smallmouth fishing, man, we can get into that one. That is one of my favorite things to do in the world. Love smallmouth fishing.
I have all the stuff to go fly fish for bass. I got into fishing for redfish out here on the East Coast. The slot fish for keeping, they're called puppy drum. But I've done a lot of research on how to fly fish for redfish, and I've never gone out and done it. I think it would be awesome to catch redfish or puppy drum on the fly.
Oh yeah, big time. Yeah, man. It's a big world. There's a lot you can do. There's a lot of cool things you can do,
and a lot of good that you can do in this big world, right?
Yeah.
And I love the fact that you're focusing your life on giving back on multiple levels. Is your goal to do this for the rest of your life, or is this a 5 or 10 year expedition for you, and then you're going to go off and do something else?
Yeah, man, it's a great question. The Bible's cautions against, saying, oh, next year I'm going to go do this, and then I'm going to go do that. Cause ultimately we're the wind, we're the smoke, and smoke goes wherever the wind tells it to go. Our goal and what we think the Lord's leading us into is doing this for the rest of our lives. So being in that part of the world, there's always instability. If you look at the countries that they're surrounded by, they're in the Caucasus, at least, to say we're going to be there the next 40 years, we can't say that, but if the Lord allows us, yeah, we want to be over there doing this for the rest of our lives. And like you said, it's multiple levels of good you can do. It's good for the animals. It's good for the environment. It's good for the countries themselves to be able to bring people in. Nobody goes to Georgia, nobody goes to Azerbaijan to hunt, because there's nothing to hunt there. But these countries want to develop these aspects of the tourism because they're some of the most beautiful places on the world that nobody's seen. And so you're doing good for the government. And then you also can really just help people on a local level, providing jobs, providing opportunities. A lot of these places, there isn't much opportunity. There isn't much hope. And so there's a lot of good you can do anywhere. And what's been so exciting, what fires me up, what gets me up every day, is the fact that I get to take my biggest passions in the world and bring them together to do something that is going to be awesome, I'm going to really enjoy, and is also going to be giving back and helping a lot of people.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell everybody where they can find your organization?
Yep. So our website is wildgiants.org, and we're redoing the website. So here in the next couple of weeks, it'll be finished, but you can get on there now. And then our Instagram, Wild Giants Conservation Fund. So that's where you can find us.
Is there anything particular you want to close with?
No, man. I mean, I really appreciate you having me on here. This has been a really good conversation. I think one of the things that I like to tell people is just take what you're passionate about and find a way to engage with that, find a way to give back with that. And so what's been so exciting, what's gotten me up, what really gets me excited is the chance to use this passion. You work half of your life, half of your life you're working. And so doing it with something that you can really enjoy and that can really help other people, to me, it's a no-brainer. So yeah, I appreciate the platform, the chance to get on here and kind of share what we're doing. And it's been a good conversation.
I've really, really enjoyed the time. I'm thinking that we should probably do this as long as I continue on with the podcast and as long as you continue to progress through your mission of this conservation effort, that maybe we revisit some recordings in the future and you can give us updates on how things are going.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love that. And also I might bend your ear and see if we could get out on one of those backcountry turkey hunts together sometime. That'd be a blast.
Absolutely. It is a ton of fun, man.
Yeah, right on.
It's like I call it the farm league for elk hunting.
That's great. I love it.
It's really cool. All right, Tanner, thank you so much for joining us. For all the listeners, please like and share, give us a follow, leave a, holy cow, my mind, a review. Thank you. My mind just went blank for a second. Leave a review. If you enjoy the show, it'd be great. And be limitless.